So welcome everyone to Poets on the Plaza celebration of National Recovery Month. And I'm just so thrilled and happy to have my friends and fabulous poets and writers, Sarah Gorham and Jeff Skinner. So for those of you that wondered why they're together, they're actually a couple, a power couple, as they say. So I'll read you a little bit of a bio about them and then we'll get right to it. Jeff Skinner was a 2014 Guggenheim Fellow in Poetry, and in 2015 was given one of 8 American Academy of Arts and Letters Awards in Literature. His recent poems have appeared in the Paris Review and Diagram. With pianist Gabe Evans, Skinner has completed his first musical play, and he's also made a movie, and he's also a playwright, and he just didn't want to take up the entire program with me reading his bio, but he's being very modest in this bio.
Good idea.
And
she likes that.
Yeah. And Sarah Gorham is a poet, an incredible poet and essayist, and I'm sorry for saying incredible. We hear it a lot lately, don't we? It's incredible, the progress we're making. But and most recently, the author of Alpine Apprentice, which is absolutely wonderful for those of you that love essays. And if you don't, this will make you love the essay. And one of the 4 finalists for the PIN Diamantstein Spiegel-Vogel Award for the Art of the Essay and Study in Perfect 2014, selected by Bernard Cooper for the 2013 AWP Award in Creative Nonfiction. Both were published by the University of Georgia Press. Gorham is the author of 4 collections of poetry: Bad Daughter, The Cure, Tension Zone, Don't Go Back to Sleep. Other honors include grants and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and 3 state arts councils. She is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Sarah Band Books, an independent nonprofit literary publisher. In 2013, the press won AWP's inaugural Small Press Award for Excellence, Creativity, and Innovation. Sarah's the mother of 2 daughters, 5 grandchildren, a wonderful dog, and Jeffrey Skinner, co-founder of Sarah Band and a much decorated poet, playwright, and professor, is her husband. And we'll hear more from their poetry and essays soon, but I think one of the reasons that I wanted them to come on tonight is that they co-edited really the seminal anthology, I think. I think that this was such an important anthology, Last Call. And how many printings is it in now? It's in its 4th or 5th? Yeah, 5th printing or?
3rd printing.
3rd printing. Pretty fabulous. And it was published in 1997, which at the time that was pretty bold and pretty courageous of them to put this anthology out. I don't think people were talking about it as much. There was still stigma surrounding it, and it's an absolutely fabulous anthology and means so much. Even now, I've been reading it, rereading it over the past couple of days, and I'm still so stunned at how moving these poems are. And I've been putting them on my Poet Laureate post, and people are responding. And I just wanted to ask you two, why did you decide to put this together?
You want to answer or you want me?
Go ahead, you start.
Well, I think that it was about 7 years after I got sober. And so I had become comfortable with the idea of sobriety. It took a long time, but I was at that point. And as a writer, I looked around and I saw a lot of damage that had come from alcohol and drugs. And so I thought about, well, is there an anthology? And I looked around for an anthology. There was a prose anthology about alcoholism, but no poetry. So I thought, well, there's a space that needs to be filled. And I knew lots of people who could contribute to it, both those on the side that had the addiction problem and those who live with them who also, they call it a family disease, and those who are with them. So, you know, we set out really not knowing what would happen, and called and got in touch with the friends that we knew who could contribute, and we got a great response. We got great poems from both parties, and we were really happy. I mean, I did some research to write the intro, and I had some knowledge of my own from experience. So we knew what we were doing. We, as a couple, have two sides of the same story. And so we could see that. So we co-edited it, and we're very pleased with the results. And I think it does plug a hole where something needed to be. And we've heard many responses from people who said to me and to Sarah, this was really important to me in my sobriety and my journey. This was a very important book. I'm glad I found it. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that there are people who felt that way, but we haven't heard from, because you don't hear from everybody. So that's kind of the story.
I actually grabbed the copy of our copy of The Last Fallen and took a look at it, reread the introduction and some of the poems, and I was amazed at the quality of the poems. I mean, after 20 years of editing and acquiring literature, it really still sticks. And the introduction is still fantastic. There's some things that need to be updated slightly, but a lot goes on. One of the things is that both of us, I mean, actually in the introduction, you're kind of demure a bit about what our involvement is in alcoholism, and don't go on any further in that. But now we would just sort of let it all hang out. But that was just one thing. And I believe that we asked I don't know how many writers there were, but only one of them refused to be involved,
that's right.
which was amazing.
I'll tell you who after this is over.
Okay.
Probably don't know him. It's been a long time.
Oh, be quiet.
Well, what was your initial reticence in terms of kind of demurring in the introduction? Is it because there was still that you're protecting family, or I'm just, like Sarah said, we'd let it all hang out now? Is it because the stigma is, books like yours have brought addiction out of the shadow of shame, alcoholism and addiction. These incredible poems, you put a real face on it. And do you think that's what's changed, or?
I think that, first of all, I didn't want us to be the star of the book. Yeah. I wanted the poems to speak for themselves, and to have a variety of poems. I wanted to give some background and some sort of undergirding to the whole project in my introduction, but I was not interested in being in the book in myself, although I had written poems about alcoholism and addiction. I thought maybe that could come later, right, in some other place, but this was supposed to be a lot of people together. It wasn't about me and Sarah, really. The impetus was because of our experience, but the project itself was to just get it out there and to have people learn what they can from it.
And I also think, having done other anthologies, that it's a little irritating to have the editors actually have their own work in their own anthology. So we wanted this to be completely separated from us.
But it wasn't reticence, I don't think. As I said, there's a difference between the way we think about it and talk about the disease of alcoholism now and addiction. We're much more open about it. I don't really care who knows or what they know at this point. But, I was about 7 years sober. And at that time, believe it or not, people who I know who've been sober for a while say that the first 5 years really comprise early sobriety. It takes a long time to get used to a completely new way of life. And that's what it is. So I was maybe I was a little reticent.
Or
Maybe-
feeling more vulnerable than you might now, and
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
newly sober and kind of shakily sober at the same time. I think that's wonderful that you left it for everyone else. Otherwise people would be looking in it sort of as an autobiography to see what was this all about? Why are Sarah and Jeff doing it? Well, I think it's just a wonderful anthology, and so many people I know have talked about it. And as I mentioned before, I've had students that have just, they had not gotten into recovery, and the book was the catalyst for them. And I think that that's something that is just so incredible to hear, that you took a chance, you took a risk, and you really moved someone to think about it. And I love the way that, for instance, you have Joan Larkin's books arranged, and I posted a couple of her poems, and she starts out with genealogy and then saying goodbye to my last drink, and how the healing starts. And I think, wow, this is sort of a sequence of going through it, of facing and going through it, and then being on the other side. So I'm so grateful for that. And I'm sure our listeners, especially my friends from the city of Salisbury, are very moved. We have this, I don't know if your towns have it, but it's in honor of the people who have died from the opioid crisis. It's called Why Kamiko Goes Purple, and our town is full of purple lights, and people who have lost beloveds have purple lights as their house light. And so to do this, to be standing with the city, and I think somebody's is not muted. Hello. So thank you so much. I mean, we have this incredible city that I tell you, we're just sort of a little polka dot in the middle of some strangely bizarre political contingencies, but we're standing with Recovery Month. We're standing with Black Lives Matter. We are having a big gay pride parade and celebration in October. So I just think, arms open to this when I suggested it to the city. And I'm so grateful for their support. So I'm wondering, we'd love to hear some poems from that time, and then moving on to others, of course, but I'd love to.
Sure. When you were speaking, I was about the writing. I was thinking to myself that there is a natural affinity between writing and the recovery from the disease, because in treatment, often it's the insistent suggestion that one writes down the lists and the feelings and all of those kinds of things. There's something about the physical act of writing itself that sort of inscribes it more deeply into the body and the heart and the mind. And so there is a relationship between writing and drinking beyond the fact that so many of our Nobel Prize winning writers were alcoholics and other sort of evidence. So I'm going to read.
Jeff, that's wonderful. I just paused just for a second there. I think just kind of dwelling in that for a minute. And I think it's something that a lot of people think about, the writers. I know when I was in graduate school getting my MFA, we used to joke that we should have, little bumper stickers on our backpacks. Wave if you're a drunk, wave if you had your parents were drunks, or wave if you're married to a drunk. And it would be like we'd all be waving. But I think there's something about artists and writers that they have the reputation for having. Sure. We have lots and lots of writers, but I think there's that. We briefly touched on it. And I think everyone here probably, if your lives are touched by alcoholism or addiction, that moment when it's different. It's almost like you've had, you finally feel like a normal person, and you finally aren't raw. You don't have that sensitivity that's so painful. And I don't know if you want to touch on that just for a minute.
There was a bonus to publishing this book, which I suddenly remembered. Sheila Murphy published a collection of short fiction on alcoholism and recovery, before we published our book. However, this book came to her attention while she was working at the Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Fund. This is back in 1997 when we were really still just getting started. And we ended up getting a 3-year, $75,000 grant from Lila Wallace. Everybody was shocked, including me. Anyway, it's obvious that there were people out there who really felt this was important to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you don't, as you say, you don't even know the people whose lives it's touched. And I know that in my circle and with my students, it's touched so many lives. One of my students ended up being one of Joan Larkin's students, and just this whole full circle. And he carries Last Call with him. So yeah, these are good things to do, I think.
Yes.
Okay, baby.
Well, here's a poem by Tess Gallagher, one of my favorite people and poets in the world. It's called 3 a.m. Kitchen, My Father Talking. For years, it was land working me, oil fields, cotton fields. Then I got some land. I worked it. Them days, you could just about make a living. I was logging. Then I sent to Missouri. Mama come out. We got married. We got some kids, 5 kids. That kept us going. We bought some land near the water. It was cheap then. The water was right there. You just looked out the window. It never left the window. I bought a boat, 14-footer. There was fish out there then. You remember, we used to catch 6, 8 fish, clean them right there in the yard. I could have fished to China. I quit the woods. One day, just walked out, took off my caulks, and that's it. I went to the docks. I was driving winch. You had to watch to see if nothing fell out of the sling. If you killed somebody, you'd never forget it. All those years, I was just working. I was on edge every day, just working. You kids, I could tell you a lot, but I won't. It's winter. I play a lot of cards down at the tavern. Your mother, I have to think of excuses to get out of the house. You're wasting your time, she says. You're wasting your money. You don't have no idea, Threesy. I run out of things to work for. Hell, why shouldn't I play cards? Threesy, some days now I just don't know. That, is a child remembering with great accuracy and with, the poignancy that goes with it, an alcoholic father. And the mix, the terrifying mix of love and fear that come with that relationship. And there's the father trying his best to do what he can to make amends, to make the child understand. When he's not very articulate, in his inarticulateness, Tess makes him say some beautiful things.
It's beautiful. And is Tess with us? I thought someone mentioned that I think Tess might be here, actually.
I think she said she was going to, so
Yeah,
that's why I want to read her poem first.
That'd be great. Well, great. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful poem. It's so poignant and nuanced. And
here's one from Dennis Johnson. It's called The Heavens.
yeah.
From mind to mind, I am acquainted with the struggles of these stars. The very same chemistry wages itself minutely in my person. It is all one intolerable war. I don't care if we're fugitives. We are ceaselessly exalted, rising like the drowned out of our shirts.
Beautiful.
That poem reminds me of something that Robert Bly once said, which is that his father was an alcoholic, and he talked about him. Bly was pretty open about things too, and he said, I understand alcoholics. What they're doing is they're on a spiritual journey. They just picked the wrong target.
Well,
It's an easy mistake to make, he said.
Well, didn't Jung write a letter to Bill? Bill of, a friend to Bill, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think I have a letter from Carl Jung, and he said, I don't think I would write this to anyone except for you, but it's not running away, but it's running toward, which is very powerful, I think. Too bad. It's such a bad vehicle.
Jean Valentine, another of my favorites, and one of your favorites.
Yes. Yeah.
American River Sky Alcohol Father. What is pornography? What is dream? American River Sky Alcohol Father. 40 years ago, 4 lifetimes ago, brown as bourbon, warm, you said to me, sorry, 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 sorry. Then you're killing your mother, and you're killing your father. What do men want? What do fathers want? Why won't they go to the mothers? What do the mothers want? Mm. American River Sky Alcohol Father, your warm hand, your glass, your bedside table gun, the dock, the water, the fragile, tough beach grass, your hand, I wouldn't swim, I wouldn't fly.
Mm. It's beautiful.
You want to get her?
She's working in the trees, so maybe she'll stop.
I used to bark at things in the trees. And here's Ray Carver, of course.
This is great.
The great writer, Ray Carver. Yeah. This is called NyQuil. It's probably familiar to some of our audience. Call it iron discipline, but for months, I never took my first drink before 11 p.m. Not so bad, considering. This was in the beginning phase of things. I knew a man whose drink of choice was Listerine. He was coming down off scotch. He bought Listerine by the case and drank it by the case. The back seat of his car was piled high with dead soldiers. Those empty bottles of Listerine gleaming in his scalding back seat. The sight of it sent me home, soul searching. I did that once or twice. Everybody does. Go way down inside and look around. I spent hours there, but didn't meet anyone or see anything of interest. I came back to the here and now and put on my slippers, fixed myself a nice glass of NyQuil, dragged a chair over to the window where I watched a pale moon struggle to rise over Cupertino, California. I waited through hours of darkness with NyQuil. And then, sweet Jesus, the first sliver of light.
Mm. Killer ending.
Beautiful.
And I'll stop of these poems, at least, unless there's something else that I think of or somebody thinks of, with Ray's other poem called Gravy, because this is after Ray got sober. And this poem, I was sober at the time too, and it appeared in the New Yorker, and it just knocked everybody out, and me especially. Ray at the time had terminal cancer, lung cancer, and he knew he was going to die, but he was sober and had been sober for years. So the poem's called Gravy. No other word will do, for that's what it was, gravy. Gravy these past 10 years. Alive, sober, working, loving and being loved by a good woman. 11 years ago, he was told he had 6 months to live at the rate he was going, and he was going nowhere but down. So he changed his ways somehow. He quit drinking. And the rest, after that, it was all gravy, every minute of it, up to and including when he was told about, well, some things that were breaking down and building up inside his head. Don't weep for me, he said to his friends. I'm a lucky man. I've had 10 years longer than I or anyone expected. Pure gravy. And don't forget it.
It's amazing.
Do you think I can read mine?
Yeah, you're up.
Yeah.
I'll get the dog.
She's looking outside. She's just making sure that everybody knows she's there.
Okay.
I think she's fine.
Well, I'm going to give you the stage.
Nancy, do you want me to start, or what's your agenda?
I would know. I want to hear from you. I'd love to hear you read, Sarah, and I hope you're going to read some of yours as well.
Not poems. I'm going to read an essay.
Oh, lovely.
It's called A Drinker's Guide to the Cat in the Hat. You all know the Cat in the Hat. Yes. Features prominently here. He taught at a community college in rural Maryland, an evening class in introductory literature that ended at 10 p.m. The commute home was an hour over single-lane highways to another small town in nearby Delaware. But first, a package store for a six-pack and a pint of Seagrams. The drive home was cool and black and empty of traffic. blinking yellow lights at most intersections, a few lit farmhouses, and once in a while, a long, low chicken barn set back discreetly from the road so the smell wouldn't overwhelm. He sipped Seagram's from the bottle, washing it down with beer. His edges wore down slowly. The mechanics of clutch, accelerator, and brake were liquid, headlights spanning into ditches and deep pasture. Even Christian rock was sweet at this speed. On his way to a distinct inebriation, he savored the leather grip, the steering wheel swaying along with the music, eyes drifting rather than darting from field to road, stoplight to dashboard. Remember the story about a girl who crashed when she leaned forward to adjust the radio dial? Fiddling with the rearview mirror was just as dangerous. Eyes on the road, driver. Thinking himself vigilant, he slowed way too early for an intersection many yards away. Brake lights ahead were doubled, though the left-hand set rarely stayed still, stretching, retracting, like Turkish taffy, he said. By the time he steered his wagon onto Market Street and pulled into our narrow driveway at 1611, he was radiating, blood a low purr. Up the steep stairs, one hand, sometimes two, on the handrail to the second floor apartment, where his wife and two young daughters slept in tiny bedrooms. We slid deeper into deeper sleep when his book bag slumped into the captain's chair. He was home. Something goes bump. The cat hits the door, head or hat misjudging, or perhaps it's only the door itself slamming into the wall. The children are seated by the window, the weather chill and rainy, not at all conducive to imaginative play. They startle, lifting an inch off their butts. Even the curtains jump, and then the door swings open. Not a straight line on him. He doesn't appear to have a skeleton. Hat beating his foot inside the door, it leans that far forward. Did he roll out of bed, tail like a mangled pipe cleaner, forgetting to shed his jammies and put on something more presentable? Why isn't the cat at work doing something constructive? On two legs, he lurches in, tipping his hat, balancing his drippy umbrella on the end of his thumb. He knows games. He has saved up a bunch of tricks to make a great day. This cat brings fun. He doesn't care if mother is out running errands or a meeting or anything else. Come on, he pleaded, proposing on our honeymoon that we blow several hundred on a meal at Harry's bar, and then sip a bottle of wine on a gondola ride through Venice's back canals, $70 for a half an hour. Under this bridge, duck, quick, let's go for more. The curried soul with polenta, the lazy dark, sonic with far-off festivity, and a traffic jam made of boats. But to tell the truth, 25 years later, that's what we remembered, little more. Italy seeded a taste for motorcycles too, and though I protested it, it was groceries we were burning. He bought a bright red Vespa with matching helmets. Scents and temperature brightened unlike anything we'd known in a car. Lilac, manure, fried chicken. We dipped into a gully like a glass of iced water, took the full hit of a mown lawn, though I warned him to avoid the shavings, shouting through my face mask in the wind. Conversation was ridiculous. Riding was risky, but it was a magnificent thrill. Happy to play the fool in shrill animal voices the children loved. Wamu, the Jamaican rag doll, rescued from a burning building by Purpley, the stuffed elephant who stretched out his trunk so she could slide down. He performed mesmerizing dramas without the soggy moral or neat conclusions. Sure, his face was a little too red, like he was about to pop. Sure, there was something disquieting in all that energy. Dads were supposed to be grown-ups. But yes, another game. He gave each girl a full glass of water, filled his mouth, and exploded in a spit take. Soon they were feeding each other knock-knock jokes, bursting before the punchline was out, soaked and drooling. He bought 7 cans of shaving cream on Halloween, and they decorated the rhododendrons, gleefully appearing later with sprayed-on beards, scary eyebrows, and beehive hairdos. Dr. Seuss's feline protagonist may be a cheerful, exotic, exuberant form of chaos, as the book's jacket copy asserts, but look at the children's faces watching the cat. Oh, they are not necessarily smiling. Their eyes resemble tunnels. Oh, Oh, they mouth as the cat balances the books in the tray and the cake and the boat and the fish in the bowl and the milk and the cup, all on one foot, hopping on the ball with its stripe around the middle. Now the rake and the red fan and the wooden toy man. Only the fan seems secured by the cat's tail, shaped like a cup hook. But that is not all. No, that is not all. As the action accelerates, little wonder Sally's red hair bow quivers with anxiety as she grabs her brother's arm and they both plant their feet like croquet wickets. Down comes the cake and the frosting slaps over the plate and the milk spills, but the bottle did not break. And the rake's bent and the boat looks like it's sailing on a wave of butter and cream. Down come the glass and the fan and the book splayed like a tent. And down comes the fish, oh, the fish, tossed out of its fishbowl into a teapot, as a matter of fact, where he frowns. One fin in the air. Now look what you did, said the fish to the cat. Now look at this house. I'm pausing at the little spaces here. Betty, cashier at the Rite Aid, had a steep beak with reading glasses perched at the very tip, classic Woolworth's 50s, wiry black hair and veiny hands. Never satisfied with a simple financial transaction, she took mental notes. Whose wallet was stuffed with crisp 20s or pilled singles? Whose child preferred a baby Ruth, and was he punished adequately? She sold booze to men, women, street people, rich people, and kept count as if bottles were Weight Watcher points. Not much of a task for her memory, the professor who purchased his daily fifth, sometimes missing a day if he sprung for a gallon. Her tongue clicked and slid over her teeth. Is that all for you? She asked. No response. Sir, that'll be $13.53. Years of this, she figured out which lady was the wife, the brusque, all business one, who didn't seem to care for conversation, who checked her change and left without a thank you. Sweetie, you know I see your husband in here every day getting him a fifth of that whiskey over there. Caught up short, I sputtered under my breath. Whatever. Thinking, nosy Parker, just do your job, please, and shut up. We're doing fine. He contemplates the big picture. I do the details. I like details. Flight arrangements, bills, doctors and dentists, chimney sweeping, furnace repair, taxes, ditching the sour milk and the moldy bread. All the right moves we made in our lives. The babies, our relocation to the coast where he juggled a part-time teaching job search, book project, toddlers, so I could have some writing too. All without family around. Those were his ideas. I did the packing. Didn't mind, couldn't imagine passing that job over to him anyway. Commotion of glasses mixed with silverware, everyone's unfolded clothes thrown into the same suitcase or two. Who could live with that? The cat is back, bearing on his back an enormous box like a redwood jacuzzi. He flips the hook and two blue-haired spawn rush out, dressed in miniature full-body sleeper suits. But no, they aren't sleeping. They are flying, followed by contrails and rapid ink flashes. They pause briefly to shake hands with poor Sally and her brother, then like gunshot dash off again. Thing one and thing two like to fly kites. High, higher, highest, in the house, no matter the spillage and untidiness. In comes mother's polka-dotted dress on a string. Down goes mama's vanity, perfume, and brush. Sally is blown off her feet. Brother grips a door jamb for dear life as two things careen around the corners, tearing up the stairs. This is worse than any argument or fender bender, says the fish. No, no, those things should not be in this house. Make them go. The kids knew he liked his ice, chipped from the fridge door, a French jelly glass set to the right of his special chair. He had them well trained by 5, snack of smokehouse almonds before dinner or goldfish in a salad bowl. He was their hero as he sat and sat and sat with his laptop, building mountains of cool stuff from eBay, antique fountain pens, Bakelite, letterpress furniture, or custom-made knives. 24 Catalan poker chips spilling over the coffee table and onto the floor. Packages of fonts so heavy the postman wondered out loud if they weren't bars of gold. The knives were impressive, made of rippled steel, inlaid pearl on the grip and blue-black blades. He called the girls to his chair, snapped his wrist forward to show them the cutting edge etched with curly cues. Oh, gosh. She wants attention. Again and again, he flipped the knife open. With each click, he growled like a wolf, and the startled children jumped back. I stood before them, straining like the fish from its fishbowl. Stop, please, put that away. What are you, Crocodile Dundee or something? Who loves the fish? Prickly fin, frowning with wrinkled pink, fishy skin, each word overpronounced, clipped. No fun fish, too strict, always worrying about homework or junk food, too easy to mock, lots of fun to run from with a snicker and a hoot. Shaving one morning, my husband lingered outside the girls' bedroom. Their noses were pressed to the back window, which was large and framed their small bodies with room to spare. In each hand, they held a pastel-colored My Little Pony. And there were more on the floor behind them, piled in a heap. They paused in their play to stare down into the alley, a stone's throw from the house. On the asphalt, a drunk lay face down, his jacket oily, pants crumpled, and one of his shoes missing. He resembled a filled-in version of a police outline at a murder scene, right hand and knee raised, cheek turned to the left. Drivers backed up honking, then inched forward, negotiating their vehicles around him, but no one stopped or called. The man had a head of thick black, only slightly disheveled hair, which unsettled Laura. That looks like Dad, she said, turning to her sister. Make that cat go away, said the fish. Tell that cat in the hat you do not want to play. Once I took a walk with my father in town for just a few days, showing obvious restraint, weaving the question around and about. He finally asked me if I thought my husband had a drinking problem. Well, no, I said. He can handle a lot, hardly ever gets drunk. He's a big guy. This I reported with only an ounce of concern. Right, honey? As I was looking at him. Later, a famous poet, Tess Gallagher, came to visit, widow of a fiction writer well known for his addictions. She had thick, henna'd hair and a maternal touch, waiting all day until they were alone before she took him out to the back porch. Maybe you ought to shorten up on the booze, friend, she said. Spirit signals, like buoys blinking in high sun. In the moment, they seemed irrelevant, unconvincing. But peering out from the dark descended, their swaying lights formed a neat line straight to the shore. I should have paid attention. But he did pay attention in a backdoor way. Their warnings slipped in and smoldered, along with his low register fear. Like so many other writers, he suspected drinking was fuel for creativity. There was the evidence, books published, plays produced, grants won, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Faulkner, James Wright. Still, he noticed the lapses, skin blotchy and cold, nerves when he gave a poetry reading or presented the same old material to his class as if he didn't know how. Once a Target clerk called the only number she could locate in a stack of poetry portfolios left by the register. The student drove by to pick them up that afternoon and brought them to class. Hey, absent-minded professor, she said, look what I found. And they all had a good laugh. Ha ha. Sally's bow droops like rain-heavy pansy petals. Mother's dress has been dragged across the carpet, spotted with lint, cat hair, cake crumbs. Brother holds an upside-down kite, and the fish issues commands from its teapot. What to do with a mess this wide and deep and tall? Every object has fallen cockeyed, frame on a wire, telephone off its cradle, crooked plates at a crooked pile, vase toppled, pink chair on its side, kicking its fat little legs. This is some kind of hairbrush, bowl, soap dish, teacup, book, soup. Where to start? Where to start if that is all possible? This mess is so big and so deep and so tall, we cannot pick it up. There is no way at all. The children's arms hang like loose rubber bands. They're up to their middles in crap. I got 3 pages left, is that all right? When an alcoholic takes a drink, the alcohol affects his brain as an antidepressant. Yeah, those two. Aren't we all? When the alcoholic takes a drink, the alcohol affects his brain as a depressant, decreasing the activity of the nervous system. In order to keep the brain functioning normally, the brain attempts to chemically counteract and disrupt the alcohol's action. In simple terms, it ramps things up. Over time, more drinking is necessary to produce that confident, soothing effect. 1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila, floor. When the alcoholic abruptly stops drinking, his nervous system suffers from uncontrolled synapse firing. Symptoms include anxiety, seizures, hallucinations, the shakes, even heart failure. The otherwise healthy individual has a significant risk of dying from withdrawal if not properly managed. Hospitals and treatment centers use various pharmaceutical medications, including barbiturates, clonidine, and vitamins like folic acid and thiamine, to get the drunk through this early stage, which lasts roughly a few days. They then work on his emotional, social, and spiritual recovery. The staff at Hazelton knew he was a professor. So the first night, they handed him a big stack of recovery books and asked him to prepare for the meeting the next day. 12, 13 different titles, none of them difficult. He read the first one all the way through, took notes, second, third, fourth. After that, he skimmed, same message, well-written or not. He had substantial recall, even doped up with Librium. He was ready to quote, criticize the simplistic sentence structure, extol the points he agreed with. He could pass the test, no sweat. Next morning, seating himself in the counselor's office, he crossed his legs and leaned back, confident. Oh, we don't want to report. We just thought that we would get that out of the way. Now you can go on in there and join the group. What followed was a militaristic routine endured because it helped him get through the day. The bed sheet, tight sheeted, early breakfast in the stainless steel cafeteria, AA meetings, steps, slogans, the psychologist half his age, forcing a role play opposite another drunk on his knees, making amends. An arrogant PhD, his closest peer in the group, he thought, stormed off. He said, "I've got this, thanks, I'm good," and no one tried to stop him. Though my husband chose this facility because it was close to the beach was not on the agenda. For a month, he couldn't phone his wife, kids, even father, who had been sober for 2 years. Everything timed, scheduled 10 minutes for a shower, 15 for dessert in the spotlight of the mess hall. Dessert. If he couldn't have a drink, he could still have his sugar straight like a cloud on the tongue. Oh, angel food cake with cream cheese frosting. Oh, chocolate meringue pie. Chastened, the cat returns to his cat-driven, cat-manufactured quicker-picker-upper jalopy. It's a Rube Goldberg contraption with cockeyed springs and telescoping arms, none of them entirely solid or securely attached, but they do the job, vroom, with a flourish and a pat. Even the hat is a little perkier on the cat's head as he maneuvers the controls and picks up the cake, the rake, the gown, milk, strings, books, dish, fan, cup, ship, and of course the fish, who sails into his fishbowl with a springy tail flip. Look at all the children's faces. Look at the children's faces. For once they are smiling, brows high, eyes bright. On his way out, the cat salutes and the fish relaxes just as mother places the toe of a neat high-heeled shoe on the doormat. She looks composed, too, the gentle drape of her coat, the S-curve of her calf, her slender hand lifted. Hello. There are diseases that die with a flourish and a fit. The course of medication is complete, the offending organ surgically removed, the story over. Chronic disease, from the Greek chronikos of time, is a never-ending tale no one wants to hear about. Arthritis, diabetes, high blood pressure, like that. In the case of alcoholism, the end is recovery, but more accurately, it's disease control. The alcoholic must live in real time, stick to the program, keep up his meetings, slogans, and steps, and not drink, ever. Various studies show that anywhere from 54 to 90% of alcoholics are likely to experience at least one relapse, and 2/3 of these are within the first 90 days. Social adjustment is a key factor in relapse prevention. Alcohol dependence froze this drinker's emotional and social skills at the age it began, around 28. Now he faced ordinary, unpleasant experiences like colds, car accidents, kids who refuse to do their homework, claustrophobic, plane travel, a pissed off wife, all without a buffer. I was recovering too, trying to extricate myself, as a cliche shows, from a family disease. This meant giving up control over a multitude of things, especially the alcoholic, disappearing on Tuesdays and Thursday evening for my own meetings with their focus on detachment and healing, and phrases like, I'm sorry you feel that way, and let it begin with me. Both AA and Al-Anon have been called selfish programs, implying not the pejorative self-centeredness to the detriment of others, but the idea that recovery must come first, or we have no value even to ourselves. He was not a happy camper. Consider the cat without his hat, sack of tricks, thing one, thing two, all his partners in crime. He did not bound through the door feeling great, upending this and that with his bedraggled, swishy tail. His temper was short. He sat in the chair like a stone, afraid to move, and the girls steered clear. Even our Friday steak dinner at Jack Fry's was dangerous because less than a month ago, it was preceded by a Seagram's and followed by a Courvoisier. Perrier on the ice just didn't do. Cranberry juice mixed with soda and lemon was not a perfect substitute. It was more than a year before his nerves healed and he began to feel human again. A new wave of students joined the ranks of his admirers, and the ones who had noticed his drinking had moved on and never looked back. Another year at least, till his humor returned and he was easier with all of us. The games continued within reason. I noticed how deftly they were tailored to the girls' advancing ages, colored with a streak of sadness. Listen to your mom, he said more than once. Let's talk it over with mom. But the dreams, a river floating hundreds of beer bottles, a bartender with his hands stretched out, double aspen with a twist, they kept on. Open the sequel. Page 1 shows a big room with sloping pink walls, and a wide red floor. Happy home, everything neat. In the corner is a single white curtained window, the glass slightly streaked, peace and quiet. Oh, but wait, could it be? Outside, surrounded by sky, is the cat peering in. Oh, say it is not so. Oh, say, stay away, at least for today. His hat tilted like a road construction barrel. His bow tie at attention, he twiddles his thumbs with a self-satisfied grin. He doesn't care what you're planning for lunch, or this promise or that. He's high as a kite, that cat, raring to go and ready for fun. That's all.
Wonderful.
Thank you for allowing me to take that time.
No, it was amazing. And I love in all of your essays, I love this moving out from the personal into the research, and then moving from the research into the more fantastic. It's fascinating that stepping away, in a way, to the research that is kind of the scaffolding, I guess. So, Jeff, how was it to hear that poem or read that poem? How much longer was it that you had that opportunity for retrospect to look back on it and write that, Sarah? That's amazing.
Oh, could you ask that question again? I thought you were addressing Jeffrey.
I'm not very good. I always like, multifaceted questions. Okay. How much longer for you to sort of get that overview of the experience from the time after when you wrote, this was in your first book of essays, right?
Yes.
Yes. So just talk about the process of writing that. It feels like it kind of came in a rush in many ways too.
It was a flash in the pan. Is that the right metaphor?
No.
Well, you don't want it to be a flash in the pan.
No. There's a sculpture in the air.
Yeah, it was great.
I had been, initially I was very alcoholic focused. And so I watched him very carefully, and I worked around him, and I went to Al-Anon where I was told that I should keep the focus on myself. And I went to AA meetings, still do, and I began to understand what was going on. And this was a traumatic experience for our family. I managed to protect myself by remaining in denial for 9 years, if you can believe it. I told my dad, that's just what he does. He takes so much more, whiskey to get him drunk. I can't believe that. I mean, I really can't believe that was the case, but it was. And, there were moments where it did flash across my mind that we had a problem. But we did also move around a lot. And so we were in different environments, and there were things that happened in each environment. And I did interview him about those drives back from Salisbury University to our house and to our apartment in Lewis, which I didn't know about. I didn't know he was drinking a fifth of whiskey and washing it down with beer. That was all secret. I also go to bed at 8:30 or 9, and so all of his drinking was done after I went to sleep. But I knew when he was drunk. That was clear. So I hope that answers your question. It was once I got the metaphor of the cat in the hat, it was really easy to write. And it does offer some levity to the story too, and also a little mystery at the end.
I think it does offer levity, and also it's a poignancy, the trying to keep everything under control and all this going on, and the bedlam and the chaos, but yet keeping it under wraps. And I've had the privilege of knowing Sarah and Jeff for many, many years. I met them when Jeff was teaching at Salisbury, right here in Salisbury University for a while. And when you had the little ones, before Saraband, before any of this, and we would all go over and have dinner and stay up with Jeff and have some wine, and Sarah would hit the hay at 9 o'clock, no matter what was going on. It would be like,
Nothing
I'm
could
done. It was great.
In college, I went to bed at 8:30.
But I'm wondering, do any of you all have any questions? There's so many lovely comments here about the writing, and someone writes, still thinking about, he was a filled-in version of a police outline, beautiful and gorgeous writing, Sarah, wonderful. And wondering if any of you all want to ask them questions. They're very open to answering them. Just unmute yourself if you want to do that. Don't be shy.
Hi, I'm Beth Doolin. First of all, it was amazing, so thank you so much. But I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the whole, link between drinking or using and creativity, and, what you thought about that, as far as, that seems to be a big thing that I hear from friends, like, well, I can't stop drinking, like I won't do art anymore, or I won't write anymore. It fuels it. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that. Thank you.
I heard those very words from him.
Yeah, when I was in treatment, it was my big concern, strangely and stupidly. I can see in retrospect, but I went to a counselor and I said, look, writing is the most important thing in my life, other than the people I love. And if I can't write again, I don't know what I'll do. So this, I'm really terrified about this. And he looked at me and he said, well, you probably won't do a lot of writing if you're dead. And I thought, that's true. That is true. You got me there. So I think it's a dangerous mythology that has grown up in America, I guess, maybe starting with Dylan Thomas, the raging drunk from Wales, and continuing on through Robert Lowell and other people. Also Pollock and other artists, especially mid-century abstract expressionists, were notorious for that kind of behavior. But I've solved the problem by staying sober and writing as well as I did, if not better, during the time when I was drinking. So I know that it's a myth, that it's a lie, but it's very seductive. It's very seductive. Don't fall for it though. you'll write better after you get sober, if that's, if that's where you're at. I can testify to that, but I didn't know it at the time.
Thank you for your thoughts on that. And I think it is true from my own experience, but thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Beth will be reading with Robert Nazarene on the 24th, I believe. So we're really going to look
Excellent.
forward to that reading. Jeff, you mentioned something, and I think that's such a great question. And also, I've had friends who don't want to they're depressed, and they don't want to take antidepressants because they're afraid if they're well, they won't write the way they write. This is my illness, my depression is what fuels my writing.
Mm.
And, it's kind of it's probably, I don't know. I don't think it's true. Of course not. Do you look back at your writing, Jeff or Sarah, before recovery for your family and see a difference in it? Or does it seem more grounded in a sense, or?
I went through some of my earlier poems to look for things maybe to read tonight, and I don't often go through my earlier books, almost never. And I was pretty surprised to learn that I'm pretty consistent, and it's hard to find a difference, except I think that I'm happier with the later stuff because there's more of me there. There was a lot of, as there was in my life, acting and putting up a sort of front, and that had to go away when I got sober. And I'm happier that the poems are more truly and expansively who I am these days. Whether they're better or not doesn't really matter to me. I'm just happy that they are. But that's the only difference. I mean, stylistically, I don't think, I've tried different forms, and I've done a lot of prose work and prose poems and that border between prose and poetry. But still, I don't see an abrupt change.
Mm-hmm. I see in both your work, having followed it and been, a diehard fan for all these years, so much more inventiveness. Of course, we were younger, but wildly inventive on both your parts and expansive.
Yeah, good, great.
Yeah.
I feel that too.
I don't know if it has anything to do with recovery or just getting older and having more perspective on things, but yeah.
Nancy. Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah. So I was curious, about this idea that, this mythology of imbibing and your creative ability to let go. And years ago in the 70s, I was initiated into Transcendental Meditation, which is, this brings you closer. But, at the time, my concern was, a theater major and, wanting to be able to express myself. It's like, oh my gosh, is meditation going to impede that ability to, write, to be creative, because of that myth of having to suffer or feel this pain to be able to evolve as an artist in some way. And, kind of the arguments for that is a way to center and bring out the purest form. But still, I think it's really a difficult thing as an artist, as a writer, to have the idea that you must be sober at all times and not, I'm a product of the 60s, that step into that other consciousness, in a way to expand your consciousness. Does that not give you some click into artistic endeavor?
That's an interesting question. And I'm also a child of the 60s.
Yeah, me too.
So, in fact, to be brutally honest, I do think that the drugs that I took, I was there in college during the height of the drug, in the 68, 69, 70, 71.
Right.
I was there. So I did all the drugs, and I think that there was a kind of opening for me. But I also, at the same time, did what you did. I took TM,
Oh,
Transcendental Meditation.
how about that?
I have continued to meditate, particularly in the past 20 years. I don't do TM exactly, but I just do a counting breath kind of meditation,
Sure.
Zen meditation. And I find that it opens me up the same way that drugs did, except without the downside. You know, you got to pay a lot to take a lot of drugs. And it's
True.
really, in the end, it's not worth the price that you have to pay. But I don't regret my experimentation of the time. I wouldn't suggest it to anybody, but it seemed to be the way I had to go. It seemed to be my path. So it's an interesting question, but I don't feel ever the need anymore because I've proven that I can write under any circumstance and sober. I don't feel the need. I just want to get to the paper. That's all I want. That's all I need.
It's beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
I'm wondering about Kelly's question in terms of suffering and, that deepening of experience that comes from suffering. Does that make sense? That there that does happen in a way. I think so. And what do you all think about it, Jeff and Sarah? I mean, your experiences, I don't know. We know people who haven't in a way, and they're still terrific writers, and they have the gift of empathy and they're able to enter some other person's space. But, you two come from places of having come through. It's like, Raymond Carver, Dennis Johnson, having come through and another convoluted, terrible question. So.
Well, I have mixed feelings about that, and Sarah can give her answer, and I hope she does. But on the one hand, I feel, as Auden did when he was judging the Yale Series Prize, and he said, I look for somebody who has a wild way with language, who's very adept and can use language in different ways and in new ways. He said, by the time you get to 5 years old, you have enough suffering material to last the rest of your life. And I think in a way he's right. You can't live a life and not suffer. It's just part of the deal. It's whether you attend to it or not and what you make of it. That's the question. So, we've had our share, but other people have had more. Other people have had less. For me, it's a kind of alertness that is the essential part to whatever happens to me, good or bad.
I had a really strange early writing experience. I started taking my poetry seriously when I had an independent study with Heather McHugh back at Antioch College. And she looked at my work and she said, "This is not very good. Go back and read some poetry." And so I did, and I began to see what was going on in the world. However, most of the books that I saw and that people were talking about were written by men. We took an advanced poetry writing workshop with Ira Sadoff, and those we had an occasional woman in there too. But so I sort of adapted to that when I went to Iowa by sort of putting myself in the persona, a male persona, when I sat down to write. And it was not my voice, for sure. But my poems were very successful. The first place I got published was Antaeus, and then Plowshares, and then The Nation. So I thought I was doing something right. And then I had 2 kids, and there was no question I had to stop that process and to begin to figure out what my voice was. And it was a rough period for me because I wasn't writing great. And he was getting every honor you could possibly receive, grants and publications. And, I was taking care of the kids, really, basically. But I moved out of that. And, the feminist movement certainly helped too. And I think I really matured in my voice in my 40s, began to mature in my 40s, which is what I say to people who are just starting to write is, don't worry, you've got a lifetime, and it could be that, you'll be 40 before you write your best poem, and hopefully better after that. So.
I think Celia has a question, and maybe Amanda, right? Celia, are you there? Celia Bland?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm going to mute.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Good. It's been a lovely reading, and I just was wondering, I was thinking more about the anthology and just how extremely emotional, deeply passionate those poems are in there. And I was just wondering if there's any anthology that you know of that's sort of a corollary for today's mass this trauma that America is going through now.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of poets who write about it. I could only think of Matthew Dickman and maybe Ocean Vuong. Do you know of such a thing, or do you have writers in mind who would be in one if you were to edit such a thing?
Well, we are not going to edit such a thing.
I think she's talking about the COVID. You're talking about COVID?
COVID, no.
Well, I'm talking about meth and
Addiction.
Oh, okay.
and
We are planning.
fentanyl, and the many hundreds of thousands of people who died from that.
It's bad. Yeah, it's very bad.
We were very aware of that, and we have signed a contract with Kaveh Akbar and Paige Lewis to do a Last Call 2.0.
Wow.
It will probably, we don't know the pub date on it because they are also doing a spiritual anthology published by Penguin, and Penguin is allowed to choose whatever pub date they want, and we have to adjust to that. But it looks like 2023 will be the pub date for that book, and it's going to be fabulous. So, it'll be, both of them are in the program. Both of them had a problem, and they're really, really good at this.
And they're young.
And they're young.
They
and that's
know-
the idea.
they know what's going on.
Is to appeal to young people in particular.
Well, thank you so much for letting me know.
Wow, that's great to hear about that. Yeah, I think writing does some good, don't you? I think writing and publishing anthologies and writing your poems helps in this crisis. I mean, we're always in crisis. This one is a biggie, the opioid crisis. It's been
Yes.
kind of covered over by COVID right now, but apparently those deaths are up.
They're up. Yeah.
Higher. Yeah, I'm not sure what they are in our community, but it's pretty bad.
And it's probably going to be a shock when we find out in a few months, when everything dies down and we find out how much it's increased, because I'm sure we don't know exactly right now.
Amanda, did you have a question? Or Amanda, yeah.
Yeah, I did. It's maybe not a question so much as it is a comment, and noticing how much in the description of the recovery process sounds how sort of intimately tied to grief it is. When you talk about the finally losing the numbness, having experienced several profound losses in the last year, I found myself, Sarah, as you were reading your essay, thinking, oh yeah, I can, it's like been a while before I can feel something again, and so I guess just more of a comment than anything else. And Nancy, I know you were talking about suffering, but and I guess it is in some ways it really truly is a kind of loss.
The loss, Amanda, meaning the loss of giving up a drinking life, or
Yeah,
giving,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
saying goodbye to my last drink. That's such a beautiful poem. I'll send that to you, Amanda. It's gorgeous. It's no small thing, and Jeff can probably speak to that. And also giving up, like Sarah, you said, the control. You know, when he wasn't you, he was kind of, you knew the Cat in the Hat was going to be a mess, but you didn't know what was on the other side of that. I mean, and that beautiful description of just, he was like a stone. He sat like a stone, and it took that long, what, 2 years, almost 3 years, for a sense of humor to come back. So I think there's that grieving process too.
We had some poems to read, by the way.
Do you want me to read them? Is that what
That's
you're
my
saying?
controlling instinct stepping in.
Well, I do have a couple that may speak to the question or the comment that Amanda had. She's absolutely right that there's a big component of grief with addiction. There's no question about it. I remember my first year being sober, I would go out on the back porch and smoke a cigarette and burst into tears for no apparent reason. No, there was nothing going on. It's just, my emotions were just coming out. And then other times I was, as she said, numb. I didn't feel much of anything. So I'll read two poems, okay, that have to do with recovery, that are my poems. The first one is called "Caught Up into Paradise, He Heard Unspeakable Words, which it is not lawful for a human to utter. One thing I may not speak of is the idea that saved my life. It's not that the idea is forbidden, nor the name, which many of the saved call divine. It's that speaking on behalf of idea commingles it with the speaker's will, diluting both. And when the next frayed to bare wire human receives the signal, salvation siphoned off by the speaker's self-love, and all is lost. Nevertheless, I want to talk about the idea, for I have seen it in the flesh, seen it work through embodiment in those who came before. Resurrection from cellular despair, the body thrown down from a great height to the maggot canyon, the groundless floor, then pulled up, shining, newborn by angelic hands. But I've also seen it fail to permeate many who I loved, who one night embraced me and the next put gun to mouth and divorced all creation, accepting the invisible. Nor can I say why them, not me, nor can anyone. And here's a poem that sort of speaks, comes out of a place that's maybe where Sarah, feminism maybe in a way, but it's about addiction. It's called Shush. The women are calling out the men, and rightly so. I'm over here trying not to make noise. I'm poor, the only sins I can afford are handmade. Mostly I watch TV. There it's sex and death, dawn to dusk. It's 3D desire and Dolby Atmos. But where is it not? I want to climb into the confetti mass of electrons, to ululate among those golden mean faces, maybe snap one off like a virtual flower. But Mama said, you dasn't, an imperative so whispery, so soft in the mouth, it almost seems unsounded, telepathic. Mama's like everyone now, in a home, she doesn't know where. The saline bag's been needled, she's leaking out. Anyway, it wasn't Mama who said dasn't. That was my Irish grandmother who died early in a time when the terminal weren't told. I lug the OED to the mahogany high desk and look. Yep, the definition of mercy has changed. But I remember seeing her before I went to college. She knew. It was in her eyes. I knew she knew. So those are two poems that sort of came out of recovery for me. I mean, I have others, but I wanted to read those. Those are fairly new. What a nice smile you have, Nancy.
No, I think that's wonderful. I'm reading, you're getting so much praise for all these things on the chat thing,
Oh,
Amanda says resurrection from cellular despair from the Maggot Canyon and devastating. So beautiful, beautiful stuff. We have a question from two questions. One from Amy, right? Are you there, Amy? Is Amy there?
Yes, hi.
Oh, hi, Amy. How are you?
All right, hi.
Good to see you. Amy's a friend of Mike on Mahila's too. We're all home week here. So.
no. Good.
Yeah, I'm listening to the story and the family disease and the family recovery. And I'm thinking about, quite frankly, how hard it is for me sometimes, or has been, to write certain things because in the back of my mind, I'm protecting our daughter, or I worry about betrayal. And I've struggled with that, quite frankly. And I'm just wondering how that was for you in your writing. Was there a difficulty in light of the children, or how might you respond to what I'm saying?
I don't think, first of all, my daughters have not read my books, and I think they have no plans to do so. And the only time I've written something in which I possibly could have harmed Laura, it was a funny story about her as a teenager. She never saw it. And so I felt confident that it wasn't going to be a problem. And they don't read his work either, do they?
Oh, if I make them.
Yeah, no, they don't want to know the personal stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they grew up with two writers, and so they're kind of sick of it. And but when I was, and so we both sort of feel free because of that, and because it's not only their life, it's our life together. Mm-hmm. And what else am I going to use for material but my life? So I do have a claim to stories about them. When I was writing my first book, I went to my father because I had written a poem about my uncle who had gone to jail. And I said, here's this pretty tough poem. What do you think? Would you be all right with me publishing it? And he said, well, why don't you just change the name and then it'd be all right. So I did.
Simple problem.
So, yeah.
And he probably never read any poetry.
Well, he did read my poetry.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he tried. Nobody in my family, in your family.
My family has a lot of writers.
We're working class from Long Island. There's no poets in my lineage. But it's a tough problem. I mean, it's not something that has an easy answer. You're correct. You have to solve it for yourself. And I think it goes case by case for me. But again, I feel freer because it is my life too.
Thank you.
A question, Galaxy, are you still there? Galaxy S? Hello, Galaxy? Anyway, Galaxy had a question, but I don't see Galaxy here anymore. Is there anyone else that has a question that is pressing or wants to talk a little bit about this? Oh,
Yeah.
Hi there. You are
Wendy Ingersoll.
Hi, Wendy. How are you doing?
And thank you very much. This has been really enjoyable and interesting. I'm wondering if the whole question of anonymity, which is so important in the 12-step program, how do you deal with that in your writing? What I heard when because I have 11 years recovery, what I heard from the headquarters in New York is that if you're going to write a poem, if you include the words AA, or I mean the letters AA or Alcoholics Anonymous, that you can't have your name on it. So it's kind of a quandary. So have you had any experience with that, or what is your practice?
Well, we ran Last Call by AA, and Al-Anon too. And they said, oh, they just wanted to see what we were doing with it. And they said, fine.
Oh, okay.
Well, my position is that anonymity is very important. It's a part of the program, which I'm not going to name, that I belong to, and that's how I handle it. I don't name the where I go or what I do. I'm part of a program that works for me, but I don't want to claim, associate myself with it publicly, in case, as they say within, in case I should fail, in case I went out again, in case I drank,
Right.
and then that would tarnish the reputation of this group. So I don't use AA, but it's a personal thing, I guess. I'm pretty clear that the program that I belong to is not happy with that kind of proclamation. Although, I've seen actors who, Robert Downey Jr. and Elton John and all these people who've gotten sober, and they make no bones about it, and I think it probably helps people. So that's complicated too. My position is I just don't name it. As you say, you can surmise what you want, but I don't use the letters in my work.
Thank you. I just want to say, I actually met you, Jeffrey, many years ago at the summer workshop at the Frost Place.
Oh, really?
Oh.
And when I wrote a book of poems myself, much about recovery, and I'm sure you don't remember, but I was nervy enough to contact you and ask you if you would be willing to write a blurb. And so you said, send it along, and you did write a blurb. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well,
You're welcome. I can't say that I remember, but
No.
there's a blur, in some sections of my life. But that one particularly, during the Frost Place, was, there was so much going on. And I had, as you know, probably the two young kids
yeah.
who were on the cusp of being teenagers. And they were a big pain in the ass during that time. So
Oh.
I was distracted. But I'm sure that I loved your poems, or else I wouldn't have done it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Now it looks like Galaxy is here. Galaxy, make yourself known. You have a question, right, Galaxy? Galaxy?
Does she know to unmute herself? Or
I don't know. Galaxy, if you unmute yourself, we can chat. Well, I don't know what to,
Hi, can you hear me?
yes, hi there.
Hi. I'm fumbling around with this telephone like nobody's business, trying to hit the buttons and do it in time to be able to respond. But thank you so much for this program. I have enjoyed listening. I'm the one who posted about being hard of hearing, and I didn't realize Sarah's poem with the cat in the hat was her story until I finally caught on a little bit later in the process, and I just loved it. And I thank you, Sarah, for sharing that, and Jeff, your poetry and all of this has been wonderful. I did have a question. And I don't know how much you'll be able to respond to it, but I just wondered, I've just finished reading or listening to the audibles about the women writers in the 60s, women poets, and I can the name of the book's gonna escape me, but I'm sorry. My question is, did women in earlier days, in the early 60s and going back further, were they less able to put forth issues about addictions, either their own or write about family members' addictions with alcohol or something else?
Well, that generation just did not talk about it. I mean, I think, it's only since the 70s and 60s, or late 60s.
Well, I think also that it was much harder for women than it was
Right,
for men.
Women were
For a
late
woman to admit
program.
that she was alcoholic was just unthinkable up until probably the 70s, really. It was a social stigma that was heavier on women than it was on men. There were some writers like, Sylvia Plath, she wasn't an addict, but she had problems. And Anne Sexton, who was an alcoholic, I'm sure, made no bones about it. And those other poets who were part of the neo-confessionalists, the confessionalist poets as they were known, the women who were part of that were bravely came forward. But it was much, much more difficult. It's absolutely true. It was more difficult for everybody, but particularly for women.
Right.
It's still harder for women, I think, than it is for men, but I can't speak to that.
And Anne Sexton is one of the 5, and I'm losing, I need Alexa. I can't remember the name of the book, and she was one of the authors, the poets that they wrote about, and it was all about them going to this special class from a college. They received scholarships to go write, and it was their opportunity to go there, and it's a lovely book. It's so well written. But thank you for responding to my question. That I thought that was the case, but I appreciate it. Thank you both for being here. Thank you, Nancy. And I think I hit the hay about the same time you do, Sarah, so I'm going to be hopping off. But thank you all.
Oh, Sarah, I realize it's bedtime. We've got to. I think Amanda has one question, and then
If there's time.
yes, I think
I
there is.
know we're all past our bedtime here. Jeff, you had mentioned you're kind of experimenting a little bit more with more, prosy poems, and I'm wondering, it's just, as I'm thinking about it, did you know how did your craft change, if at all, during recovery? I mean, it seems like, as we talk about, that line between prose and poetry, that it's kind of entering that kind of maybe a little more of liminal space, right? And I'm wondering if recovery is kind of, there's something about being in that space and finding a kind of new ground. So I'm just curious from a craft perspective what you might have noticed about your writing.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that my work loosened up after recovery. It became freer. Nancy said more innovative. I'd like to think that, but I know it became freer. And I wrote lots of prose poems after I got sober. I was, in a sense, it's interesting. I wrote a poem recently that used this quote, but Robert Creeley once talked about the quatrain as being a container for strong feeling. And if you look at my early books, a lot of them were in quatrains or tercets or some sort of formal. I wrote a lot of sonnets. And it's not that I don't still believe in those forms and use them. I love form. But at the time, I think I was sort of captured by the necessity to have a kind of stricture around me. And it's because I was nuts inside, and I was an addict. And so everything was on the verge of collapsing. I had to hold it together. So when I got sober, things could unravel a little. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
He's also written a musical, so it's great.
I'm really free now.
He's gonna be on Broadway. I mean, after this is over, I'm gonna read the whole play. So John and I are both looking forward to it. We love the music, but I loved what you said about having that container, that structure around you, holding you in. Oh gosh, I think of Anne Sexton. What did she say? You can't build a picket fence around your nightmares, but you can try, I guess.
It's a great line.
It is. It is.
Yeah, I love Sexton, and she was very free, and she was alcoholic. Of course, she had terrible problems, but she was a model of sort of freedom, and I love her work. I probably love all alcoholics' work. I mean, there's something. Every time I find a filmmaker or a musician or somebody that I really love, I find out, oh, he or she is alcoholic.
It's kin, blood kin.
Yeah, blood kin.
That's what it is, for
She's
sure.
the first poet that I fell in love with, and I always remember the poem that she wrote about the palindrome that she saw on the side of a barn. I think in England, rats live on no evil star, and I was just remember as a teenager being completely fascinated by that.
Yes, it's a great poem and a great idea that she was struck by. You're right.
Are there any more questions before we close? Or would you all like to read another thing? And we'd love to hear it.
I'll read one more short poem. Should I? Let me see. Huh? Yeah.
Oh, yes. And Sarah and Jeff, we no longer have Dennis Johnson with us, and this is a dear, wonderful Jane Mead that we
Yes.
lost the past year.
Yep, that's right. Well, here's a happy poem, and I don't write many of them, so pay attention, please. It's called Prospero's Happiness. I was a piece of music pinned to the horizon. No, I was me sitting in a wooden chair. All sorts of furious thoughts collapse when you're not looking. There was the wall I punched 3 holes in to let what was left of the marriage escape. If you're human, there's no escape. You have to be human. Leave me alone about the new sins. Every one of them is ancient and familiar. Still, I feel useless and shamed when it's only the spell of the new poem holding me in its arms. And why am I not out there saving the world, etc.? That's culture for you. But I can't help it. Nothing beats a squealing newborn poem in your arms, all wet and huge-eyed. I could have been a successful scat singer on Neptune, I think, for all they know about scat singing on Neptune. On this planet, everybody knows everything about everything, except how it began and what's the damn reason for it anyway. Sometimes I think I'd be all right alone, but no, I need people. It's proven by science. Nevertheless, I took a picture of an island and enhanced my solitary presence there with Photoshop, a trick I learned on YouTube. Of course, when God does it, you are really enhanced. The fruit trees laden, the coconuts filled with milk and white meat. And this, in fact, is the place I have come to rest. Prospero, surveying his island from a mesh hammock, plush sky, stars and planets embossed, a garden, blue ocean, my wife, and daughters close enough to hear me sigh. Child of God eating an orange in the sun. It's a good one to end on, isn't it?
That's a happy one. This is not so happy.
You can, if you want to end on a
You
down.
got to have happy. She's not going to.
Generally, so this is perfect. And I hope for you. Anyway, it's in honor of Jane Mead, who passed away. We published her first book. On the lawn at the drug rehab center to my father, because the wooden lawn statues here, the bear whose tail could be an emerging turd, says Gail, the squatting monkey, the cow with taut udders, are all vaguely obscene. This lawn is not quite institutional. We sit, half a family in a circle, Gail, Richie, and I, with our father, Dad, groping awkwardly back to each other. You ask our ages. We are older than you thought, much. You offer us each a small cigar and ask if we are happy. The blue smoke turns to water in my lungs. Gail brings out the pornographic comics she's working on, in which her history teacher meets an embarrassing end. The teacher's kidnapped, ransom set, nobody pays. The ransom is reduced and reduced again. It would be awful, ransom demanded, and nobody so much as notices. We laugh. You say our faces the night we came to lock you up made a beautiful circle around you. And then you stop and I see it coming. What do you want from me anyway, you fucking kidnappers? I'll tell you exactly. I want you to tell the truth. Our faces were not beautiful. Truth is, you fired 5 shots and we scattered. Behind the stone pillar between the vineyard and the house, I thought that night of how you taught us years ago to stand quietly among the vines, to close our eyes and listen with our feet to the sound of the grapes growing. I listened and I didn't hear them, Father. I heard the words I'd read on intervention theory. Tell the addict how he has let you down. Have specific examples ready. Useless. But we went after you again. I know there are rooms in the mind anyone can walk into. I'm not saying they're any worse than this strange lawn or any better. But if you want to march methodically into that complicated place, I want you to stand up first, to shake my hand and say goodbye.
It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Gosh, this has been just a fantastic evening. And it's wonderful to see you two. you know, and we haven't seen each other in so long or sat down together. So this is like a real blessing of COVID in a way. Is
Yeah.
yeah, it's been wonderful, and I know everyone else just loved it. And we're going to be doing 3 more, and I wish we could keep going. I could keep talking all night.
Send us the dates of those, will you? I want
I
to
will, definitely. And thank you so
thank you
much.
for asking us. And,
Yes,
and
thank
thank you
you.
all for the questions and the attention, and write well and keep well.
Yeah.
All of you.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you so much for
All
coming.
right. Thank you.